Hello, and welcome to this presentation of Digging into Dyslexia. I'm Renee Bernhardt, and I currently volunteer as the president of the Georgia branch of the International Dyslexia Association. I've enjoyed more than 18 years in public education, serving at schools in upstate New York and Cherokee County, Georgia. Working with students in grades 1 through 12, I started to focus on dyslexia support after my grad school work in literacy. My current role with the IDA Georgia has provided opportunities to help students, parents, and teachers gain a deeper understanding of dyslexia and to share tools, resources, strategies, and support. The International Dyslexia Association, or IDA, was founded back in 1949, and it was originally called the Orton Society to honor the work of Dr. Samuel Torrey Orton, a founder in dyslexia research. The IDA serves individuals with dyslexia, their families, and professionals in the field. We have over 43 branches throughout the United States and Canada, with 21 global partners in 19 countries. So what is dyslexia? Well, it's a specific learning disability that is neurological in origin and characterized by difficulties with accurate and/or fluent word recognition, poor spelling and decoding abilities. These difficulties typically result from a deficit in the phonological component of language that is often unexpected in relation to other cognitive abilities and the provision of effective classroom instruction. Secondary consequences may include problems in reading comprehension and reduced reading experience that can impede the growth of vocabulary and background knowledge. So that was a pretty wordy definition, and what exactly does it mean? Dyslexia refers to a cluster of symptoms, and these cause individuals to struggle with reading, spelling, writing, and sometimes with pronouncing words. There is no cure for dyslexia, but with instruction, it can be remediated, and individuals with dyslexia can be highly successful. And dyslexia can range from very mild to quite severe. Researchers such as Dr. Guinevere Eden, a professor at Georgetown University, were among the first to use magnetic resonance imaging, otherwise known as MRI, to study dyslexia. These studies have shown that dyslexic readers activate different areas of the brain as compared to typical readers. This helps us understand that dyslexia derives from the way the brain processes information and is therefore neurobiological. Dyslexia is a specific learning disability, and as we just discussed, it's neurobiological in origin. It typically involves frequent errors in reading words or slow, labored reading, and it most often includes poor spelling and difficulty sounding out words. These struggles are related to poor phonological processing. It's often unexpected because the person with dyslexia has an average or above IQ and has other educational strengths. Secondary consequences can include difficulty writing, a lack of interest in reading, and poor attention or others. Dyslexia is a language-based difficulty that is not due to the lack of effort, and it doesn't discriminate based on socioeconomic status. Even with good classroom instruction, some students with dyslexia can continue to struggle and may benefit from additional interventions. Dyslexia is hereditary. If a parent has dyslexia, that parent's children have about a 40% chance of inheriting it. There are many myths associated with dyslexia, so let's dispel some of those. Individuals with dyslexia don't typically read words backwards or see things in reverse. Remember that the area of difficulty is usually in phonological component of the brain, and this has to do with the ability to segment and blend sounds for reading and spelling. It's not a disease, but a specific learning disability that may or may not require an IEP or individualized education plan. This depends on the severity of the dyslexia and the impact that it has on the child's education. And people with dyslexia typically have an average IQ or above. ADHD may or may not occur with someone who has dyslexia. There's about a 30% chance that you will have ADHD and dyslexia. And if you have dyslexia, you might be considered to be very creative, but it's definitely not a guarantee. Many people who have dyslexia will tell you they are no more creative than the average student. So just how often does dyslexia occur? Well, it's estimated that 1 in 5 individuals has some degree of dyslexia. About 13 to 14% of public school students nationwide will qualify for special ed services. Half of students who receive special ed services have a learning disability, and about 85% of those students have their primary learning disability in reading and language processing. Here are some common concerns that may indicate the need for further evaluation to determine if a student has dyslexia when compared to same-age peers. Did the child have difficulty learning to speak, learning letters and the sounds that correspond to letters? Does the child have difficulty writing sentences and paragraphs? Or is the child having a hard time memorizing number facts, completing math problems, and reading fluently? Or does the child have difficulty understanding longer assignments, spelling many words, and learning another language? These are common characteristics that may be indicators of dyslexia. Some additional indicators that may have you questioning whether or not your child has dyslexia are difficulty with remembering simple sequences, such as counting to 20, naming the days of the week, or even reciting the alphabet. Difficulty understanding the rhyming of words, such as knowing that fat rhymes with cat. Trouble recognizing words that begin with the same sound. For example, that bird, baby, and big all start with B. They may have some pronunciation difficulties, trouble easily clapping hands to the rhythm of a song, or difficulty with word retrieval, or frequently uses words like stuff and that thing rather than remembering the specific words to name objects. They may have trouble remembering names of places and people, or difficulty remembering spoken directions. The way to be sure that a student has dyslexia is through testing that is performed by a certified educational psychologist, usually one who is assigned to the child's school. The psychologist will use research-based formal testing in reading, language, and writing skills. There are a variety of factors to include in a dyslexia evaluation, such as family history, the child's school attendance, previous reading interventions, school-based data, tutoring, and tests to evaluate spelling and reading processes. When thinking about reading instruction, there are 5 key areas that were identified by the National Reading Panel. The first one is phonemic awareness. That's that yellow pillar, gold-colored pillar. It's the best predictor of reading success. Phonemic awareness includes the ability to hear and identify and manipulate phonemes, which are the smallest units of individual sounds. For example, cat has 3 phonemes. K, a, t are the 3 sounds in the word cat. The kind of greenish sage color pillar here is the phonics pillar, and that's the link between hearing sounds and combining them with letters. This requires systematic, explicit instruction with a consistent scope and sequence progressing from least to most complex. The middle pillar, sort of this gray color, is the fluency pillar. It directly impacts comprehension and the ability to read accurately, fluently, and with expression. The fourth pillar, this bluish color, is vocabulary, and reminds us that a strong vocabulary helps kids to think and understand more deeply. The more they understand about word meanings, the better they can understand what they read. And the last pillar is the pillar that links the other four that precede it, and that is reading comprehension. It's the ability to extract meaning from text and think critically about it. In order to comprehend and understand what we read, the other four pillars must be strong and intact. The cognitive model of reading reminds us that there are many different areas that can potentially break down and cause difficulties with reading comprehension. Starting in the upper left-hand corner with the yellow phonological awareness block, that's where students have to be able to break down letters by their individual sounds or word parts by individual sounds. Once they've mastered that skill, we look at the student's ability to decode or sound out words. And we also look at their sight word knowledge, their ability to memorize words that do not follow predictable patterns for decoding. If they have that intact, but they're still struggling with reading comprehension, we next look at their fluency and the context. So can they read fluently when looking at informational text, and also read fluently when they're just reading nonfiction? From there, we progress to the automatic word recognition. Can they automatically recognize words in any context? Another area that's also a key consideration are these green blocks that are in the middle, and they are all factors in language comprehension. For example, vocabulary. Students need to have a rich vocabulary in various content areas, and they also have to have a knowledge of structure. That's that morphology and how words are broken down into meaningful parts. And background knowledge, what do they know about this subject? All of these things lead to successful language comprehension, which is also an important factor in reading comprehension. And starting at the bottom left-hand corner in blue, very young children learn print concepts. Understanding that letters make up words and words combine together to make sentences. They also learn the general purposes for reading, reading for information, reading for pleasure, and reading to learn about new subjects. And then specific purposes as well for reading, and knowledge of strategies, when to read carefully and closely, and when they can use context clues and other parts of the words and the passages to help them better understand what they're reading. So when we look at breakdowns in reading comprehension, all of these areas need to be considered. There are no quick fixes when working with students to remediate dyslexia or difficulties with reading or spelling. It's important to follow research-based methodology that has demonstrated success in supporting dyslexic learners. Beware of scams and false promises. There are many out there. When looking at best practices in teaching students who have dyslexia, structured literacy follows evidence-based teaching principles for students who struggle with reading and spelling. Successful intervention programs include these elements of structured literacy. Looking at that red area, this is systematic instruction that follows a specific, cumulative scope and sequence. In the blue area, explicit instruction is directly taught by the teacher. That means no guesswork on the part of the student. And in that gold or yellow area is the diagnostic instruction that responds to specific needs of individual students. There are 6 key concepts that make up successful structured literacy instruction, including phonology, which is the study of sounds in spoken words, phonics and sound-symbol relationships that align with the alphabetic principle to map sounds to letters, syllable instruction, that ensures that students are well versed in the 6-syllable types for reading and spelling, morphology instruction that includes prefixes, suffixes, and other meaning-laden parts of words, and syntax and semantics, which is thoroughly taught to support sentence and paragraph writing. So why is structured literacy important to dyslexic learners? Well, first, the instructional tasks are modeled and clearly explained. And this is especially important when first introduced or if the child is having difficulty. Second, highly explicit instruction is provided, not only in important foundational skills such as decoding and spelling, but also in higher level aspects of literacy, such as syntax, reading comprehension, and text composition. And third, important prerequisite skills are taught before students are expected to learn more advanced skills. Structured literacy instruction includes meaningful interactions with language during the lesson. It also provides multiple opportunities to practice instructional tasks, especially before being graded. Practice is so important. Well-targeted corrective feedback is provided after the initial student response. So as soon as the student responds to something that the teacher has indicated, the student receives immediate feedback so that they know if their response was correct or incorrect, and then they can quickly make that adjustment. Other benefits of structured literacy instruction include the encouragement of student effort, lesson engagement during teacher-led instruction that is monitored and scaffolded so that the student works from easier tasks to progressively more difficult, and the more difficult tasks are introduced as the student is ready for them. Lesson engagement during independent work is also monitored and facilitated, and students successfully complete activities at a high criterion level of performance before moving on to more advanced skills. And remember, when determining student progress, there are no quick fixes. Some components of literacy may take longer to remediate than others. Looking for patterns in data collection is much more useful than comparing the results of just one assessment. There are many ways that teachers and parents can help a student who has dyslexia. Clarify or simplify any written directions, and break tasks down into smaller or subtasks to make them more manageable. You can highlight essential and the most important information and teach the student how to highlight information as well. Provide many opportunities to practice a skill and give feedback on how the student is doing. This is especially important that the student receive many opportunities to practice before receiving a grade. This also encourages the student to take some risks. Use study guides and provide a glossary of terms in each subject area. And be sure that the study guide is completed in clear handwriting that the student can read. So if the student has difficulty with handwriting or difficult to read handwriting, it might be helpful to have the student complete the original copy of the study guide, but then have the teacher give a pre-filled in, well-written or more clearly written version for the student to use as well. Many students find it helpful to record the teacher during the lesson, and then the teacher should allow the student or encourage the student to re-watch or re-listen to the recording. Graphic organizers and visual tools are often a great help. Giving instructions in writing and verbally, so writing the instructions and saying the instructions, giving those dual modalities can be very helpful. Have the student repeat instructions and be sure that he or she understands them completely. Review concepts daily and strive to develop strong study habits. That daily review of concepts is really critical. And use positive reinforcement and empowering feedback to always encourage the student. When you're having difficulty, with reading or spelling or any difficulty with learning, it's easy to become frustrated. So it's critical that teachers and parents consistently use that positive reinforcement and encouragement with the student. Classroom accommodations can be very helpful for students who have dyslexia, and some of these can also be used at home. For example, if the student sits near the teacher and or away from distraction, they're much more likely to be engaged in classroom discussion. Students should also consistently use an assignment book or device to record and plan assignments. And there are so many great devices that can be used on their phone, their computer, or their iPad. Teachers should also display work samples or use clearly defined rubrics and give examples. Oftentimes, students are unsure of what the finished product or final work should look like, and these visual samples can be very helpful. Consider flexible work times and extended time as needed. Students with language-based learning difficulties often need a little bit of extra time for processing. Students can also listen to text via a text reader, and there are so many that are available today, again, through a variety of devices. Use control text to support learning of new phonetic concepts. Control text is text that is controlled so that only words that reflect the syllable patterns or word families that have been taught are used in about 90% of the text or the book that the student is reading. And this can be really empowering for students who have struggled to be able to use controlled text, which has a very high rate of readability and reading success for students who struggle. Your child's teacher may recommend assistive technology to use at school and or at home. The list of tools is constantly changing and expanding. Students who struggle with reading and spelling may benefit from using spell check tools, text-to-speech and word prediction, text readers to read what they write and to read text aloud, and tools like Grammarly to help edit and revise their written work. There are so many things that can be used on the computer, on an iPad, even on the student's phone if they're old enough to have a phone. There is an abundance of apps that help make learning and homework a lot more fun. Here are some of my favorites. While some are more engaging for younger students, there are many to choose from for every age. One example is the Voice Changer app. I love to use this with students who are kind of hesitant to read text, especially students in elementary school. So I will pull up the Voice Changer app on my iPad and give them some text to read. And with this one, they can use a really silly voice. They actually read the text, and when they play it back, they have this really silly voice read the text back to them. And that's just funny, and they have such a good time changing the voices and seeing how silly they can get that they kind of forget that they're reading text. It also helps to increase not only their motivation, but increases their text reading accuracy because they're so focused on what they're reading and excited to have a silly voice read it back. But there are a lot of great apps and resources out there. It's important to find those that are motivational for the student and that keep their interest. Well, I hope this presentation on dyslexia has helped you to gain a deeper understanding of what dyslexia actually is and some of the resources to help with instruction for students. If you have concerns about your child and are wondering who can help, talk to your child's teacher or guidance counselor or even the school psychologist if you have concerns, and let them know what your concerns are. And for more information on dyslexia, I hope you'll visit our IDA Georgia website at georgia.dyslexiaida.org.